The courtroom was freezing, far too cold for the storm that was brewing inside me. Judge Reynolds's gavel had barely struck the bench when my soon-to-be ex-wife leaned back in her chair, wearing that self-satisfied smirk she'd perfected. She crossed her legs deliberately, her crimson designer heels glinting under the harsh fluorescent lights. Each tap against the polished floor a soft taunt in rhythm. "Your Honor," she purred, brushing a manicured nail along her cheek with languid grace. "Let's be honest. My husband," she dragged her gaze toward me, dripping disdain, "is like a workhorse. Dependable, predictable, and very, very easy to ride." A ripple of gasps and uneasy laughter floated through the courtroom. Even her lawyer cracked a grin, smug behind his imported suit. The judge barely lifted a brow, giving the room a single, curt tap of his gavel to restore silence. I clenched my jaw but didn't bite. She wanted a show, a reaction. She'd get one, just not the kind she imagined. 8 years of marriage had unraveled into this. A well-rehearsed performance meant to humiliate me while she played the wounded goddess. She'd already carved her victory where she could. The house I had literally built with my hands. Half my company's assets, my peace of mind. Now she was here simply to gloat, twisting the knife for her own satisfaction. In the back row sat her new man. Tailored suit, slick grin, the sort of corporate shark who believed charm and hubris were synonyms. His expression was detached amusement, like he was watching a rerun of a show whose ending he already knew. He didn't, because what none of them realized was that this wasn't her triumphant finale. It was my opening act. Her attorney rose, smoothing his expensive tie with the confidence of someone used to getting his way. "Your Honor, my client simply wishes to ensure fair compensation," he began, voice dripping with false concern. "During her marriage, Mrs. Hayes made significant lifestyle sacrifices to support her husband's career. She deserves equitable alimony, sacrifices." I almost laughed at the word. Judge Reynolds looked over his reading glasses. "Mr. Hayes, your response?" I took a slow, deliberate breath. My palms pressed against the cool wooden desk before me. Then I stood and began unbuttoning my dress shirt. The sound of fabric sliding against itself filled the courtroom. 1 button, 2, 3. I could feel every pair of eyes watching, confusion thickening the air. Even the judge tilted his head slightly, uncertain of where this was going. My wife's smirk faltered, just a flicker, but enough for me to see the first crack in her armor. I didn't rush. I folded the shirt neatly over the chair, exposing a body she no longer recognized. Gasps rippled through the room. Her boyfriend's smile vanished. The last time she'd looked at me, really looked, I'd been soft around the edges, worn down by years of 12-hour workdays, endless compromises, and unreciprocated loyalty. Comfortable, convenient. The man before her now was someone else, broad-shouldered, hard lines drawn by months of discipline. Strength earned rep by rep in the gym, pain chiseled into purpose. The fatigue had been melted down and reforged into muscle, focus, determination, and right above my heart, ink, still settling, was the mark of my rebirth. A fierce, unfettered horse ripping through broken chains. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone, especially her. Her eyes widened, a faint tremor in her jaw giving her away. Her lawyer sputtered, "Your Honor, I fail to see how any of this is relevant." I finished, cutting in smoothly, voice calm but honed to a blade's edge. "You wanted to talk about sacrifices. Let's." I turned to the judge, every syllable deliberate. "I worked myself raw for 8 years, so she could find herself. Paid for her cosmetic fixes, luxury escapes, endless shopping. I even put her name on my business thinking it meant partnership." My gaze swung to her, locking on. "How did she repay me?" I gestured at the back row. "With him." The courtroom buzzed. Murmurs, throat clears, the ripple of carefully contained curiosity. Her lawyer moved to object, but Judge Reynolds waved him down. "Let him speak." "Thank you, Your Honor." I reached for the manila file I'd kept on the table beside me, its weight strangely satisfying in my hand. "You call me a workhorse?" I said, allowing a thin smirk to rise. "Then I guess it's time you see how this workhorse fights back." Her confidence faltered completely as I dropped the envelope onto the table with a heavy thud. "In here," I said clearly, my voice echoing against the paneled walls, "you'll find documented proof of Mrs. Hayes' ongoing financial fraud. Money siphoned from my company through falsified business expenses, trips, clothes, payments, all under her signature." The shift in the room's energy was instantaneous. Her face drained of color, her mouth opening soundlessly like a diver gasping for air. Her lawyer swore softly under his breath, flipping scrambled notes. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Hayes, are you asserting your wife engaged in embezzlement?" I am, Your Honor, and I can prove it. With slow precision, I opened the folder. Each page landed one by one: bank statements, transfer records, falsified invoices. The silence was deafening except for the quiet slap of evidence on wood. When I first found out about the affair, I didn't break down. I studied. If she wanted war, she'd get it, but on my battlefield. I'd hired a forensic accountant, trailed every cent, every hidden card, every fraudulent receipt masked as business meals or networking retreats. The report showed thousands funneled into a private account, vacations passed off as client outreach, and even the down payment on an apartment, conveniently in her name, an escape hatch for her new chapter. Each signature, each date was hers. The judge's eyes narrowed slightly as he flipped through the pages. "Mrs. Hayes," he said, voice level but dangerous, "would you care to explain these discrepancies?" Her mask shattered completely. "This is absurd!" She laughed, a shaky, hollow sound. "He's making this up. I would never." "You'll find her signature on every transfer," I interjected evenly. "And this," I slid another document across, "is the email where she explicitly instructs her accountant to reroute my company's funds into her personal account." Her head dropped. Blood drained from her cheeks. "You hacked my email?" "No," I replied softly. "I accessed every company-linked address on my network. Belonged to me, remember?" The judge sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Mrs. Hayes, these are serious allegations. Until we verify these records, I will not be ruling on alimony." Her attorney scrambled, pulling papers from his briefcase, whispering frantically to her, his earlier smug composure gone. For the first time in our marriage, she wasn't steering anything, and I wasn't quite finished. I straightened, adjusting my cufflinks, and glanced toward the back. Her boyfriend, the smug shadow she'd traded me for, wasn't smirking anymore. His expression had gone tight, his jaw working furiously, every trace of superiority stripped away. "Your Honor," I said evenly, reaching into my pocket. "One more piece of evidence before we proceed." Judge Reynolds nodded calmly. "Go ahead, Mr. Hayes." I held up a small USB drive between my fingers, letting it glint under the courtroom lights. Conversations between Mrs. Hayes and Mr. Brooks. I gestured toward her boyfriend, whose face immediately went stiff, in which they discussed their plan to bleed me. Financially, before she officially filed for divorce, my wife's head snapped toward me so fast I thought she might give herself whiplash. What she screeched, that's illegal. He can't record private conversations." I turned to the judge. "Your Honor, all recordings were made in my own home in a state where one-party consent is completely legal." Judge Reynolds arched an eyebrow before waving for the BFF to collect the USB. "I'll have this reviewed," he said. "If it contains what you claim, Mr. Hayes, then this case just became much bigger than a simple divorce hearing." The blood drained from her boyfriend's face. And in that moment, I knew he didn't know he had no idea she was planning to take him down with her beautiful. I turned back to my wife, lowering my voice so only she could hear me. "You thought you were playing me?" he murmured. "But you were always playing yourself." Her jaw clenched so hard I could hear her teeth grinding. I wasn't the workhorse anymore. I was the man who just wrecked her entire future. The fallout begins. The judge took a deep breath, given the serious nature of these claims. "I will need to review all financial documents and evidence before making any rulings. Until then, all assets remain frozen." Her head snapped toward him in horror. "Frozen," she repeated, her voice cracking. "Yes," Judge Reynolds said flatly. "Which means you cannot access your bank accounts, your business shares, or any joint assets until this case is concluded." Her hands were shaking now. She turned to her lawyer. "Do something," she hissed. He just rubbed his temples, looking utterly defeated. Meanwhile, I sat back down, perfectly calm, perfectly composed, and watched the reality of her situation finally settle in. She had been planning to walk away wealthy and victorious. Instead, she had just been cut off. Completely, and her boyfriend. He was already checking his watch, looking like he wanted to be anywhere but here. I glanced at him again, smirking slightly. He wouldn't last. She was about to learn just how quickly men like him run when the money dries up. But that was a problem for her to deal with, because for the first time in a long, long time, I had already won. The sound of my soon-to-be ex-wife's frantic breathing filled the courtroom, her perfectly polished exterior crumbling in real time. The judge's ruling to freeze her assets had sent her into a tailspin, her carefully curated escape plan unraveling thread by thread. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot, as her lawyer attempted to stammer out a response. something about reviewing the evidence and reassessing the financial implications. I turned my attention to the man who had helped destroy my marriage, her boyfriend, the powerful corporate lawyer. She had traded me in for the same man who had been so smug when this trial began, watching my humiliation. With thinly veiled amusement, now he looked like he wanted to disappear. I leaned back in my chair, giving him a knowing smirk. Time to apply. Pressure, Your Honor, I said, keeping my tone even before we break for recess. I'd like to make an additional request regarding the financial fraud investigation. Judge Reynolds peered over his glasses. Go on, Mr. Hayes. I turned my gaze directly toward my wife's boyfriend. As you'll see in the submitted documents, I continued several of the fraudulent transactions in question are linked to Mr. Brooks. His head snapped toward me. What he said a little too quickly. I could practically see the sweat forming at his temples. Judge Reynolds flipped through the papers before looking at him. Mr. Brooks, would you care to explain? Why, your name appears in these financial documents. My ex-wife whipped around to face him, her eyes wide. She hadn't expected this. She had dragged him into her scheme, but like the greedy fool he hadn't asked enough questions. Your Honor, I have no idea what he's talking about, Brooks stammered. I chuckled. Oh, you don't? I asked, tilting my head, because according to these records, multiple payments were transferred to a personal account registered under your name, including, I picked up another sheet, a very generous consultation fee labeled under legal services. Judge Reynolds raised a brow. Is this true, Mr. Brooks? He faltered, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. I don't handle personal finances, I smirked. That was the beauty of this trap. Couldn't deny the paper trail. He had accepted money from my wife, likely without questioning it, assuming it was part of a divorce strategy. But now no, it looked like he was complicit in financial fraud, and for a man like him, a lawyer, that was career suicide. I saw the exact moment he realized it. He shot my wife a look, not of love, not of devotion, of pure betrayal. Jessica, he hissed under his breath, his voice low and few I use. What the hell is this? She shook her head, rapidly scrambling. Wait. No, this isn't what it looks like. I had to move money around and, I needed to. Judge Reynolds sighed heavily. I'll be calling for an official forensic audit of both parties. Financial records. If Mr. Brooks was involved knowingly, he will also be held liable. Brooks shot out of his chair. This is ridiculous. I refuse to. You'll sit down, Mr. Brooks. The judge snapped, his voice like a whip, or I will hold you in contempt. Brooks froze. His entire career was suddenly on the line, and Jessica. She finally, fully understood what I had done to her. Her money was gone. Her assets were frozen, and now the man she thought was her upgrade was about to abandon her. I settled back in my seat, my heart steady, my hands relaxed. It was over. She had lost the moment. It all came crashing down 15 minutes later, after the judge called for a recess. I watched as my soon-to-be ex-wife desperately clung to her boyfriend's arm. Baby, listen to me. She pleaded, her voice trembling. I wouldn't do this to you. It's just business stuff. We can fix this. Brooks ripped his arm away. You idiot, he hissed. Do you have any idea what you've done? She blinked rapidly, tears forming in her eyes. You said we'd be together, she whispered. You said? I said a lot of things. He ran a hand through his hair, looking like he was about to be sick. I didn't sign up to be part of a federal fraud investigation. Her breath hitched. I stood up, adjusting my cufflinks, and walked past them slowly. As I passed, I leaned in just enough to whisper, looks like you overplayed your hand, sweetheart. She turned on me, eyes blazing with fury. You think you won? She spat, voice shaking. You think this makes you a man? I smiled, a slow, measured, victorious smile. No, I said, slipping on my jacket. I think this makes me free. And then I walked away while she stood there, broken, with no money, no power, and no one left to save her. Aftermath, a taste of her own medicine. A week later, I got a text from an unknown number. I opened it. It was Jessica. Jessica, I made a mistake. Jessica, please, I just want to talk. Jessica, we can fix this. I laughed. Not a bitter laugh, not an angry laugh, a free laugh. Then, without hesitation, I deleted her message. I didn't need to respond. I had already said everything I needed to say. The moment I deleted Jessica's message, something shifted inside me. For the first time in months, no years, I felt light, unburdened, free. The woman who had once held every part of my life in her grip was nothing to me. Now just a name in a court file, a lesson in betrayal, and yet Her downfall wasn't over because, while I had walked away victorious, she still had everything to lose: the aftermath. Public humiliation. The next few weeks were a story. Norm for Jessica. First came the financial audit. The court launched a full investigation into her fraudulent transactions, and as expected, the evidence was undeniable. She had stolen money from our business, funneled funds into secret accounts, and committed outright embezzlement. She wasn't just losing alimony, she was facing potential criminal charges. And then came the breakup. I had already known Brooks was going to cut and run, but even I underestimated how fast he would throw her under the bus. Just 3 days after the hearing, his law firm publicly distanced itself from him. His boss made a statement that the firm had zero tolerance for unethical behavior, and Brooks resigned before they could fire him and Jessica. She found herself alone, completely, with no boyfriend, no money, and a ruined reputation. Jessica's final plea: I expected one last desperate attempt from her. And sure enough, one evening as I was finishing my workout at home, she showed up. I heard the knock at the door, steady but hesitant. I considered ignoring it, but then I thought, why not enjoy this? I opened the door, and there she stood, Jessica Hay. Once my wife, now just a shell of the woman she used to be. She was still trying to look put together, but there was a desperation in her eyes. Her makeup was too perfect, as if she was trying to mask how miserable she was. Her expensive jewelry was gone, most likely pawned to survive, and when she spoke, her voice was softer than I had ever heard it before. Hey, she said, forcing a small smile, can we talk? I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. What is there to talk about? I asked, my voice calm, unreadable. She shifted on her feet, letting out a nervous laugh. Look, I know things got messy. I know we had our differences. But I just stared at her, waiting. I miss you, she finally said. I raised an eyebrow. Do you? She swallowed hard. Yeah, we had so many good years, and I made a mistake. I let things get out of control. I didn't respond, I just let the silence stretch between us. Jessica's face twisted slightly, and the ACT slipped. Her voice turned sharper. Damn it, can't you just stop being so smug for 5 seconds? I'm trying here. I chuckled. There she was, the real Jessica, the one who had tried to tear me down in court, the one who had mocked me for being loyal, for being easy to ride. Now she wanted me back. I tilted me head slightly. You don't miss me. I said plainly, you miss the life I gave. You. Her lips parted slightly, like she wanted to protest. But she didn't, because she knew it was true. I have nothing left, she admitted, her voice breaking. No money, no one to turn to. I just need a little help, just until I get back on my feet. I almost laughed, the audacity, but I didn't give her the reaction she wanted. Instead, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my wallet, and handed her a $1 bill. She stared at it. What the hell is this? She snapped. I smiled. Consider it my last act of generosity. Her face flushed red with humiliation. You son of a... I shut the door in her face, and that was the last time I ever saw Jessica Hayes. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.